So what I want to get through today is a couple segments of how I do it, but this doesn't mean that I want you to become a version of me. I just want you to maybe take some of the tools that I use to create a better life for yourself. I'm not trying to teach you how to do a thing. I'm trying to create transformation, because I'm always trying to create transformation in myself, right? And I think if I go back every year for the last 10 years, I started off this career as an agent that I struggled to even sell one property because the market was very slow when I got in the business. I joke that my wife and I called ourselves the closers. And I was like, somebody's going to scratch out that C and we're going to be the losers if we don't sell this listing soon, right? Or they're going to call us the listers because we were listing properties, but they weren't selling. But I just went to find people smarter than me and learn from them, take their tools, implement them in my life, and execute. So I broke it into basically 5 segments. The first is the 5-pillar framework. The second would be time block it and habit building, how to turn something into an actual habit. Number 3 is going to be goal setting and what I do from a weekly perspective to keep all of the crazy things manageable. And then we're going to do a Q&A session as well too. And through each section, I'm probably going to ask for a little bit of interaction from you guys, just so I can get feedback on where you're at in the different stages of your career and life. We also have a whole bunch of questions that we were given by people that had signed up for this. So I had basically asked 3 simple questions. And the first question was, what do you need help with around this topic? Scroll back up to the top over here. What would you like to have help with when it comes to time management? What questions do you have around time management specifically? And then how could I best serve you to get to this solution? I was on a podcast recently and the guy was asking me about leadership and he's like, oh, you're a leader. I'm like, not really. I'm more of a servant than I am a leader. So I want you to think of that in that framework. Now, the first prompt that I have for you all is going through your own personal feelings when it comes to balancing work, business, personal life, relationships. In the comments, 1 out of 10, 7's not an option. Where would you rate where you're at right now versus where you want to be? So first, just drop in the first number, which could be a 4, and you'd like to be at an 8. Maybe you're at a 6. You want to be at a 10. I just want to get a temperature read on the room. And I'm going to ask a couple other questions. Stephanie Whitty, nice to see you here. I saw your name on the email list. I was actually super pumped. She is an investor, landlord in the area. I've known Stephanie for like 20 plus years and wonderful person. 6'6", 210, 3. Jeff, nice to see you as well. Quinn, nice to see you, Quinn. Rob James is, you're at an 8. There you go. You're at an 8. You want to be on a 10. And it's interesting. So seeing all these numbers, Paul, I love seeing all the names that are here. Jessica, nice to see you as well too. So wherever you're at scales to wherever you're going. So when Rob says, I'm at an 8, I want to get to a 10, what I would challenge you, Rob, is the goals we're going to set for you in November 2025 are going to be so big, I'm going to knock you back down to like a 4 to a 6, because if you're not challenging the system, you're not going to see improvement. If you're sitting in a comfortable spot, you have to get uncomfortable to get good at something, right? I would challenge you to think of weight training, losing weight, running a marathon. Look, the physical body does not respond unless you're in resistance. And I would also say that all of you, from a high level perspective in this business, I guarantee you, your biggest growth has always come from your biggest difficulties, right? Getting fired from a client because you did a terrible job communicating with them probably made you better at communication, right? Having a relationship end because you weren't on the same page and you didn't spend the time mapping out what the next year was going to look like and what your goals and ambitions were probably led to you thinking about communicating a little bit more. Sirhan taught me one thing that I'll share with you all right now that was a super hack. Don't book anything after 6 p.m. that Shannon doesn't have the ability to cancel and definitely doesn't know about. That's probably one of the biggest tips he ever gave me in terms of relationship building. And that's simply looking at the calendar the week ahead and showing her what's going on and making modifications from there based on what we're trying to achieve, right? I'll get you to that point through this, and I'll explain how I do it now. What I also want to discuss, though, is I haven't figured it out yet either. Nobody has, right? It's always about constant improvement. I'm going to talk about a lot of things, but it's not like I'm hitting these things 100% of the time. If I hit them 60% of the time, 70% of the time, I'm better than 99% of the world. but it's all about, do you actually have a plan for what you're looking to accomplish? And then really auditing yourself of, are you tracking your activities and where you're spending your time and resources against those actual goals? Or are they just on a wall somewhere because it makes you feel good? I see Leo Grant is coming into the room. So I'm going to have you guys actually ask yourselves a question before I get into the first segment. And you can jump in the comments. You can track anything. RR is my right hand. She is my executive assistant and does so much. Many of you have met her through emails, booking phone calls, doing referrals. Anna is an amazing referral partner down in the Sarnia area, one of my favorite agents that we worked a very difficult deal that almost died over a ceiling fan, but we got it done and built a friendship over that. And she's met RR before. So many of you will meet RR on camera shortly. And she'll be pulling up some of your questions. I'll break probably every 10 minutes to maybe get through some questions and get some interaction. Would love to call you to actually ask your camera or ask your question on camera. The reason that's important is who you are, where you're from. You'll probably get referrals from this group. Most of the people I see here are actually operators that do quite a bit of business, and it's a great opportunity to make money while we're spending time getting better at time blocking. So there's that note. What I want to ask you to ask yourself, though, is if I didn't know you and all I could look at was your bank account and your calendar, what would that tell me about you? Where do you spend your time and money currently? Don't need to share this with the group. Write down the first 3 words of what comes to mind when it comes to your calendar, and write the first 3 words of what comes to mind with your bank account. Fishing gear would be something that would be popping up on my bank account that maybe I need to dial back a little bit, right? Marketing is maybe something I really need to refocus on in terms of where I'm spending my money on marketing and doing new things because I've mastered certain things, right? When you ask yourselves these questions, you'll tend to find that the words that jump off the page at you, you just haven't really taken the attention to. Where I'm spending my time. Sorry, RR, can you just mute? I'm just getting some feedback from somebody. All right. I also think when I'm auditing my time, I'm also very thoughtful about where I'm spending my time doing things for certain properties, clients, phone calls. I just got a lead that called me on a property. I'm actually not the person to send them the information. I'm not the person to book the showing or even take that person through. I'm aware of that. But I was the person who did literally everything because I had no business and I did anything to just make it happen. I bet that's ingrained in so many of you, and you're just reactive to phone calls and say, sure, I'll do it, because you scrapped your way through and you know what it's like to have nothing. So you're terrified of giving yourself that space to say, you know what, I'm not actually the person for this, and saying no. Saying no is a full sentence and one of the most powerful words out there. If you agree, drop a 1 in the comments. So I guess many of you have probably heard my story in the past. I'll skip over the Coles notes of it. What I will get to, though, the very first part of this segment that is super important to me anyways, where all of my time blocking and business planning and time management starts, is with my 5-pillar framework. Many of you heard me say this 1,000 times. I'll say it 1,001 because I say it for myself. The 5 things that are important to me in my life are my faith, my family, my fitness, my fun, and my finances. It's taken me almost 20 years to figure that out. And I did it in reverse order for the first 10. I thought if I made enough money, then I would be able to pay for trips, and then I would be able to work out and do what I want, and then spend time with my wife, and then maybe spend time with my Bible and my spiritual life, right? Then I realized that it's actually the opposite, because if my head's right with God, then I'm in a better place to serve my wife and daughter. If they're super happy and feel very well taken care of, I'm going to be able to go work out and do the things that I want to do to keep the vehicle working. Then I'm going to be able to go hiking, take photos, go fishing, have fun. And if I take care of those first 4 pillars, which is why we do what we do, right? The reason you work is to have the abundance in your life to do those things. You realize how little time you actually have to work. Like if you front loaded your calendar, which we'll talk about, if you front loaded your entire year with those 4 things first, and then really ask yourself in a 7-day work week, how much time do I have to learn the market, prospect, market myself, and actually execute against files? You would wonder, how on earth am I ever going to do this? But I would actually challenge you that you'll probably be a lot more efficient in that time, because when you do it in reverse order, and you put work first, and those other things are pulling on you in a million different directions, you're not productive in the time that you actually do have to work. And I would argue that the time that I have a time block to prospect, market, work on my business, learn the market, train with my team, I'm there and I make every second count because I know how valuable every minute of that time actually is. We all have the same amount of time, right? So that's my 5 pillars. What I want you guys to do is write down in those areas of your life, 1 to 10, 7 is not an option. And the reason it's not an option is it's not an answer. It's your, oh, I don't really want to answer this question answer, right? I would ask you to rate your faith or spiritual life, whatever that means to you, your family life, if you don't have a wife or kids, your relationship with your family or your friends. And some of us don't have family. Some of us only have friend groups, but that is your family. 1 out of 10, 7 is not an option. I want you to think about your actual fitness, right? Your mental fitness and your physical fitness. 1 out of 10, 7 is not an option. Your fun, how much time are you actually taking to go on that trip that you wanted to take, right? Go do that thing that scared you. Maybe you want to take up a sport. Maybe you want to start playing pickleball or do jujitsu or go fishing or that something you did as a child that you loved so much that you're just not taking time to actually do. And then 1 out of 10, 7 is not an option in terms of where you're at in your career. And that could be broken down into subsegments. That could be your actual real estate business, how many sales you're doing, how many buyers, sellers you're working with, how big your team is or isn't. It could be a goal to shrink your team, right? It could be a goal to hire a couple extra assistants, fly under the radar. And everybody has different goals, right? Like I'm going to give you my framework and kind of how I've built it out for myself. But not everybody wants to do social media. Not everybody has to do it. I'll be very honest with you. I know very successful agents that don't do any social media, and I know very unsuccessful agents that do a lot of social media. It's like having a lot of billboards, having a gigantic team or brokerage, but your net is the same as if you did 25 deals on your own. I'd rather do 25 deals on my own. I have a lot more time than just do it for the ego, right? So that's the structure in terms of how I look at the initial pillars. And then I will take each of those pillars and I'll categorize them and break them down. And I'll think of within the parameters of faith, what does that mean to me in terms of if I'm at a 4, what would it take to get me to an 8 to a 10? This is a very simple exercise. You don't have to do it all now. You can make a note for later, but write that down. What would it take for me to get from a 4 to an 8? And I can think pragmatically off the top of my head. I do my Bible study in the morning already. I've built that habit. I journal and I set the intention for the day in the morning, but I don't do it at night as much as I should. I'm probably only batting 40% at nighttime because I'm exhausted and I don't always plan my days correctly. But I do know that if I just took the extra 10 or 15 minutes at the end of the day to close my loop with no devices in prayer, maybe stretch a little bit, then I'm going to be better off. So I'd set that as a new target of what can I implement into my life for next year to achieve that thing, right? I'm going to give you one example in each. If I showed you my actual matrix I drew out one day, you'd think I was a crazy person, which we're all a little crazy to be in this business. But what you focus on expands, right? So I would look at that component of my life. From a family perspective, more time with the girls is so important to me, especially at the stage of life that my daughter is in. I've probably got 8 more summers with her before I'm not the guy that she wants to play pranks on and go to the beach with and play all the time with, right? So like that time is very, very important to me. But I also think of, okay, what can I stack in terms of my faith and my family that coincide so that I'm actually doing both at the same time? Well, I could probably read with them because we have a great spiritual life as a family. And I actually learn things from my daughter when we talk about scripture and we go through that. So now I can take the 2 things and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And instead of checking emails at 9 o'clock at night, I can go upstairs and we can read some scripture and we can just talk for 30 minutes before we go to bed. Now I'm hitting 2 out of my 5 stacks. Then I think of the fitness side of things. Many of you know I had a massive hip surgery December 2022. I had a ceramic resurfacing. It took me about a year to get back to where I am today. I'm now in the stage of life where longevity is more important than trying to look good. Right? In our younger years, Rob can attest to this. You want to look jacked, you want to look amazing because you're getting the family and like it's just it's how it goes, right? You want to attract the woman and so on and so forth. Now I'm really thinking about what is the next 40-year trajectory of my life looks like. I'll give you some book recommendations through this training as well too, because I think it'll be helpful. There was a book by Peter Attia called Outlive. Fascinating read. And it actually talks about the keys to longevity being more than just how much you can bench press and what you're eating. It has more to do with stress reduction. It has more to do with maintaining and growing muscle. Recent stat he was saying is a lady in her 40s should be able to walk with 35-pound dumbbells for 1 minute. The reason that is so important is progressive overload over time will help you prevent injuries, stability. And they were saying as people age, they tend to become a little bit more frail. And if they injure themselves and they're laid up from that injury, they're going to have more muscle loss than they ever would in their life. And it'd be harder to regain that. So I was like, oh, okay. So like steady state cardio is a lot more important to me. So now I can think, well, how can I do steady state cardio when I have so much else to do? I got to take care of my faith and I got to take care of my family. Well, I can throw a backpack full of camera gear and we can go hiking in the Pinery and maybe we can talk about scripture at the same time. So I can now stack 3 of those things at the same time where you can see a pattern emerging amongst me looking at the different aspects of my life that I'm trying to take from a 6 or a 5 to an 8 to a 10. And how if you're strategic about it, you can kill multiple burns at the same time. And it's not taking any more of your time. What it is taking is time to plan and intentionality around where you're spending that time, right? So if I look at those first 3 aspects, I've got them covered with what I just said. The fitness portion I've already covered. The fun portion, we've gone hiking at the Pinery. I snuck that one in before I even got to it, right? I love hiking. I love photography. I think of the fun things in your life. And like when I say I want to create transformation, like I want you to think of something right now that you absolutely love to do that you don't do and drop it in the comments. I don't care what it is. It is so important for you to find joy in the life that you live, because by the time you get to the work, it's going to be a breeze and people will want to work with you. Sailing, scuba diving, travel, writing music. What's wild is as I'm seeing, travel, let's all travel together. Let's run some conferences, outdoor golf, hiking. What's interesting, Elkin, I didn't even know you hear Eric Meisner, horseback riding. Eric sent a beautiful lasso to my daughter that's hanging up in her room, and we still need to meet my friend. Rob James travels like the 1%. Where are you going, Rob? I'm Mike. I know you're going somewhere soon.
St. Bart's on Friday.
Amazing. So I'm going to call on him in a couple of minutes to talk about that integration and what he's going to do from a real estate perspective. But all of it, so everything you're saying in there, the reason I asked you to do that is tell me something that you love. Now I'm going to throw it right back at you. And I'm going to ask you, how intentionally can you integrate this into your life with your family, with the other pillars that I gave you and your work? I bet you the gentleman that said sailing, blowing glass, gardening, every single one of these niches, travel, every single one of these niches, I bet you, if I sat down with you for an hour, we can find a way to make it profitable from your real estate business side of things. If you joined a sailing club and were super involved in that sailing club and you just went sailing and like actively tried not to talk about real estate, I bet you it's 6 months before you get 2 or 3 referrals from the sailing club. Put a 1 in the comments if you agree with me, right? Mark Tyson on my team hates social media, doesn't like doing video. And I'm like, don't do it. He's like, what do you mean? Like, you're the video guy. I thought I had to do video. I'm like, no, I don't want you to be me. What do you like to do? Hockey, golf, squash. I'm like, go play hockey, golf, and squash. He's like, how's that going to help me in real estate? I'm like, trust me, just go play hockey, golf, and squash. When you learn the market and you know the market in the locker room, you're naturally going to start talking about real estate. And at my jiu-jitsu gym one year, I remember I did 5 referrals back to back while I was like rolling and getting choked by people. Like, what do you think about this house in Sarnia? Right. And these are people that are like world-class athletes, right? Just being around people doing the thing you love to do, they're going to start trusting you because they realize that you're not there to sell them something. So that's the 5-pillar framework. What I'd like to do is first I'll call on Rob. I'll ask RR after that to unmute and see if there were any questions or any feedback that we can dig into. But Rob, I mean, you've been through the fire. Maybe give a little bit of introduction of who you are, what you do, and then maybe how you integrate some of these aspects into your life.
Sure thing. So Rob James from Windsor, Ontario, but I now live in London. I work with Justin at Prime Real Estate. And my background was in fitness. So I worked at Good Life Fitness for 16 years. For my last 7 years at Good Life Fitness, I was the divisional manager of Southwestern Ontario, mostly managing sales and service. And my real estate beginning started as an investor. So I was flipping houses, started about 15 years ago. And that was my taste of real estate. But at that time, I never thought I would lead Good Life. I always wanted to try to explore real estate a little bit further, but never really had the confidence really to leave and start something new. And COVID opened up the door. And here I am. Now, with regard to my upcoming trip, one of the things I try to do when I travel, and I love to travel, and those that know me on this call know I travel quite often, is I try to set priorities before I go, because the worst thing is going away, coming back, and then feeling overwhelmed with a bunch of work that it takes weeks to feel like you're catching up on. So I set priorities before I go, and I try to set very clear windows of when I'm going to still check my emails, re-go to my database, get my touches out. And for myself, I'm a morning person. I love to wake up usually well before my girlfriend does, hours before. So it gives me a good hour and a half every morning for doing just that, right? Having a cup of coffee, doing a little bit of work makes me feel good that my clients are still taken care of. And then I'm allowed to disengage and unplug, and then enjoy my time with whoever I'm with and enjoy the vacation. And I always actually set up usually a 30 to 45 minute kind of follow up later on in the day, just to see if anybody had reached out to me and if there's any fires I need to put out or what have you. If you're in real estate, that fires typically they pop up quite often. So that's what I do.
Awesome. I appreciate that a lot. And I think, again, it comes down to intentionality, right? Like, you're going to get better at managing this as you go. Rob and I had a chat, I remember probably about a month ago, and he had left on a long leg trip and he had crushed it right before that. And he took his foot off the gas. And then when he got back, he's like, dude, it took time to get that cycle back up. How do you keep the balls going? And I said, when I travel or we go away, we'll go away typically 30 days once a year, 7 days once a quarter, 3 days once a month. That's my cadence. I'll explain that in a minute. But when we go away, I still do a 45-minute to 60-minute workout in the morning, typically maintenance. I'm not training as hard as when I'm at home, but I'm keeping the machine moving because it's important at my age to do that. I'm keeping the business moving too. So I'm still doing my morning routine, right? I'm doing my miracle morning. I'm doing my morning routine, workout, whatnot. And then I am setting the tone for the rest of the day with my clients. So I'm doing a quick mind sweep and time block, which is the next segment we're going to get into. And then I'm touching the critical clients and I'm delegating everything else. I'm setting the expectations that I'm not going to be available for you to just call me whenever time you want. I do that 45 minutes of the morning, 45 minutes at the end of the day. I'll maybe check in really briefly at noon just to make sure that anything that is absolutely critical, houses burning down, deals are getting done, get dealt with. But I think the challenge that most of us have is in this business, we think that we need to be on 24 hours a day. We think we need to be answering emails and phone calls at 10 o'clock at night. I made the mistake earlier of thinking I need to answer every single phone call. I've realized that in my business, responding to the lead immediately is very important, but I actually find it's quite better for me to get context to why are they calling me before I choose to call them back. If they get responded to immediately with a custom text message, not, hey, I'm busy, I'll call you back after, that standard text message on your phone. If I take a second to send a message and saying, hey, Anna, I'm tied up in a meeting, I'll call you right back. Is there something I can help you with? She's probably going to give me a bullet point that I'm going to be prepped for to save her time when I call her back as well. More often than not, though, we just pick up the call and then all of a sudden we're in somebody else's world doing something for them, which has stopped us from doing what we're supposed to be doing, right? Which was actually one of the questions that we had from the audience that I'll get to next. So stepping back for a second, when it comes back to going at the pillars, before I get into time blocking and habit building, I think going back to the pillars and why I'm doing what I'm doing and where I'm deploying my only 3 resources that I have, time, skill, and money, is the most important thing. And this is a 1-hour call that we're doing here. Obviously, we have limited time. But what I would challenge you for in the next 30 days, take a Saturday, take 45 minutes, do it early enough, turn the phones off, and write down why you're doing what you're doing, where you rank in those 5 pillars, and then what you want to do for your life moving forward to get from there. So the question we had from the person on the call was specifically around what I was just talking about. And let me just pull up the questions here. And it was... Kathy Sparks. Kathy, if you're here, you can unmute. If not, that's okay. And it was, how do you stay on task and focus with all the outside distractions and interruptions through social media, junk email, etc.? How do you get things done? How do you stop ignoring the shiny objects and the, hey, look, squirrel? It's the same way you get better at literally anything. Practice, right? So if you were going to sit down and I was going to sit down and try and be in prayer for an hour, it would probably start with 2-minute sprints before I started thinking about the deals that I got to work on and what I'm going to have for breakfast and everything else. But then if I did it the next day, I could probably do 5 minutes. And then the next day I could probably do 7 minutes, and then maybe 8 minutes, and then maybe 15 minutes, and then maybe back down to 5 minutes, and then 20 minutes. And you can see the pattern emerging. It's the same thing with time blocking, right? Is, oh yeah, now I remember, I go back to my calendar to tell me what I should be doing today. Not this, not what I'm remembering or, the checklist that I created, because that becomes problematic. It's my calendar that I stick to. Because I asked you earlier, if you looked at your calendar and your bank account, what story would it tell you? Well, I'm going to build my story through my calendar, which is what we're going to get into next. So anybody want to unmic or have any questions before we get into the next segment? If not, I'm going to have to put some jet fuel on this because it is 1:28 and time is flying by. Perfect.
I see a question, Justin, in the comment from Zachary Timmerman. So he said, what about clients who have previously worked with another realtor who just reply 24/7? How do you reframe their expectations?
You train them is what you do, right? You train them on how to communicate with you. So initially it starts at the consultation. Hey, this is how we work. This is how I operate. You're going to hear from this person on my team and this person. And if you're a solo agent or I'm by myself, I'm going to say, this is the procedure for how we're going to operate as a buyer and a seller. And I'll flat out tell them, this is my schedule so that I can execute against what you're asking me to execute and be the best at what I do. If there's an absolute emergency, you have my cell phone number, and you can text message me anytime and say, hey, it's an emergency. An emergency is something that is deal related, offer related, the house is burning down. If it's not an emergency, then we're going to deal with it within regular business hours. But keep in mind, if you have to get into that property because they're going to get multiple offers, I will be faster to respond than anybody. The other side of that coin is you have to understand why I may not be as responsive to email as a terrible agent that you maybe have worked with who's glued to his email 24/7. The reason why I'm successful is because I have parameters around how I operate. Email is not a priority way of contacting me. So here's a fun fact. I don't check email probably more than 3 times a day, right? I got this from one of my mentors where it was 30 minutes from 7 to 7:30, 15 minutes from 12 to 12:15, 30 minutes from 5 to 5:30, and then 100,000 times if there's a deal happening and I got to get it done to 10 p.m. But that's only like 1% of the time, right? More often than not, you can operate within regular business hours. And I'll jokingly talk to my clients like that too and say, these are my parameters. This is how I operate, but I'm also built to close deals. So if it's like, I got to stay up to 1 a.m, drive to your house or find you on a cruise ship, I'm your guy. That's what they want to hear. They want to hear confidence. And also another line that I've used with clients is like, okay, so you want to hire somebody that's at your beck and call 24/7. They're probably not that great at their job if they have that much time to only service you and one client. Like, we're one of the top rated teams in Southwestern Ontario for a reason. These are the reasons. But at the same time, I think you can build a relationship with that client and ask them how they want to be communicated with and make sure you have a system set up for that. So now we're going to talk about the system. Is there anything else, RR, before I get to that?
I think just one more this is actually from Susan through email. So she said her biggest issue is staying on track with times blocked. So, and start something and it's not finished, and then her time block gets off track.
Yeah, so I think the way to do that is to allocate more than enough time for the task that you're looking to accomplish. Like, I would even look at, say it's going to take me an hour to do a listing appointment. I would do an extra 15, maybe an extra half an hour and half an hour on both ends of that task. So then you're not booking too much in your calendar. And I was that guy. I'm probably still that guy to a certain degree, where I'll be booked like minute to minute certain days. By the time I'm done that meeting, I can't even catch up on maybe a text message or a phone call because I'm running to the next meeting. The system is built to help me get to the place that I want to be. But sometimes I'll throw the whole system for a loop, because I'm in a growth stage or a harvest stage, right? When the business is there, the business is there. And sometimes in this business, you got to grit and bear it. But I will default back to the system every time and check in quarterly to be like, how am I tracking to my 5Fs? Like, am I tracking to my goals, or am I just staying busy to stay busy because it feels good to run errands and run around to do things? I can fix that sign. I can go to this client's house. They need to see my face. I have to go do this. I have to go do that. A lot of that, you just go revert back to your original plan. So building out the perfect time block, which is why you guys are all here. Time blocking is a methodology that I use so that I can map the actions I need to do against the ambitions that I have. And again, going back to, if you read my calendar, what would it tell you about me? I'm going to go on the honor system here, and I'm going to show you guys a screenshot of my calendar and give you a heart attack, but then I'm going to explain why it allows me to have so much free time. Do not record, do not screenshot this, please. It's a closed group of people. This recording is not being shared with anybody else, but I'll explain what the calendar looks like, and then I'll explain how I use it. And then I'll show you how to build your own. I should probably move this screen before I do that. Bear with me 1 second, guys. Oh, I officially have too many screens in this office. There it is. Let me see. Definitely not that. That is the synopsis. Here it is. Everything's quitting unexpectedly, of course. So this is what my calendar looks like. Oh, did I drop out of the call? Nope, I'm still in the call.
Good.
Okay, so you're noticing, first off, it looks insanely chaotic, right? And I'll explain a few things about this calendar and the way that it's structured. So green is personal time, blue is work time, purple is team time, yellow are showings on my properties. I have to do a little bit of stuff on the back end to always like switch it over. Like this one should actually be under broker bay, so I can get a snapshot. The cool thing about this calendar is now I can turn that off and start cleaning up my calendar. I can turn off the team calendar and drop those off as well. And I can turn on and off my different calendars so I can see what I'm working on and when I'm working on it. If I go to my personal calendar, you see every single day except Sunday. That's my miracle morning. That's prayer, gratitude, journaling, and typically working out, and then mind sweeping and time blocking. And then, there's my training block. So that's my prayer, gratitude, and journaling. And then I actually work out. And then I typically do my other items after that. You can see my work items here are typically blocked in. These I move down to about 7 o'clock. This would be doing my mind sweep time block, and then comms. Comms is my email time block where I'm 30 minutes dead focused on getting through my email, categorizing, sorting, or putting it on a list. Every Tuesday, I typically do a LinkedIn post. You can see the little repeating task there. Morning mobility is there for quick reference. You know, these are the things that I do for mobility, so I don't need to remember it. It's always in the calendar. Then I'll gear up, I'll drive. I have a sync meeting with my leadership team. I'll update the town hall notes. I'll do the town hall meeting with my staff. I click on that. My link is in there to jump into that call. Then we do training. This week, we talked about how to upload the perfect deal on Brokerment. I can do it in person or I can do it on there. Then I've got all these blocks that you can see that are important things that I'm working on. Then I have this call that I just click on and I can come to the meeting and I don't have to think about it. And then I have a commercial sync meeting with the commercial team. I have a Sirhan call at 3. Nope, I'm not going to be on that call because I actually have a builder meeting. And then I got to do a bunch of other stuff. I should probably stop sharing this calendar so I can start talking about the concepts now. It sounds like a lot, right? But it took only a little bit of work to build out that simple, repeatable framework. And it only took a little bit of extra work to put it in my calendar. The amount of freedom that I now have, not having to remember anything because it's in the calendar, is the hack, right? Everybody asks, what's the hack? I'm like, well, figure out what you need to do, write it down, and then put it somewhere that you can reference. Because right now it's in here and you feel overwhelmed because you think you got to remember everything and you just feel disorganized. The cool thing about dealing with a calendar like that is my assistant, RR, who's on this call, if she needs me to do something, the way she knows to get me to do it is she will put it in my calendar with a link to the thing that I need to do. And all I have to do is click on it and do the thing and then delete it off the calendar and it's done. She knows that if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist to me. Just like if communication isn't in my CRM, doesn't exist to me. And I beat these guys over the head with that at Prime because it makes us go faster. Like if Kyle's putting in his comms with our builder or the lead we're working on or a group chat that we have with somebody else and follow up us, I don't got to interrupt him to be like, where are we at on this file? Like interrupt his day and slow him down to get caught up. It's the same thing with your calendar. Now, the way that I get there is very simple. The first framework that I told you, once you're done the 5 F's and saying from a health and fitness perspective, I want to go hiking with my family once a week and take some pictures, pick a day where you think you can actually accomplish that. I'm going to probably say Saturday morning. And I can do that probably every Saturday morning. If the weather's terrible one day, maybe I'll move it to another day. But once the time block is there and I put it at a repeating every 7-day task, now I got the machine, the system helping me track. Am I doing it? Am I not doing it? I can look at the end of the week and say, did I do those things? There's a bunch of stuff I missed here. And I'll audit myself at the end of the week and be like, okay, what was important that I actually did? And were the things that I was doing actually the things I should be doing? That's the cool thing about really front loading your calendar. So I showed you the result. Now, on a daily basis, the practice that I use to actually populate the calendar is probably what you're all here for. So the time blocking habit that I have is typically using some type of paper notebook in that initial time block that I have every single day and at night, although I only do it 40% of the time at night, and thinking about the important things that I have to do tracking against my goals. And the way that I typically do it, I should probably create a PDF or something to drop out to you guys so you don't have to see my terrible handwriting. There we go. It's the same thing every single time. I write down a verse, I journal a little bit, and then I have a star. I have 2 double arrows, the letter B, the letter C, and then a circle. Under a star is the house is burning down. I have to get these things done. I have to get something over to Konikow. I have to deal with Domus and Halcyon, Hulls, Wasco, and the productivity group. There were 6 things on that list that are like, these absolutely have to happen today, no matter what. The 2 arrows, that's my follow-up task. I can't say those names, but I had four very important phone calls I had to have yesterday that happened no matter what. This is outside of my daily prospecting. B is my building, right? So am I building my business? Am I working on my website? Am I working on the new templates for the sales packages for the team? Am I looking over my finances with my partner, right? That's all building your actual business, and that should be in your calendar daily. C, I'm an insane content creator, so I always have a list of like, what are we working on that needs to be published and where are we at? And that for you, it could be, I'm just going to share 3 stories on Instagram today because I know I need to create content and market myself, right? And then O is events, big events that are coming up. I can cross off the productivity call because we're on it right now. But I have Agent X that I'm speaking at next week. We have the family reunion coming at Prime, which is a monthly thing we do. So I just know these things are coming down the pipeline. Now, these things exist in a digital brain as well, but I find the habit of writing them out really makes me think about what is actually important. Like what is burning in my brain right now that needs to be put somewhere so I don't forget to do those things. Then I take this and I put it into what I call my digital brain. I use Asana. People can use Trello. You can use your notes app on your phone. I use my notes app for like 3 years. And I just had a running list of critical, so star with an underline, 2 arrows, follow up, build, create, and then events. And every day I would literally create that list. And it sounds like dual input, but it is important for me to have it somewhere so that as I'm going out of the day, it doesn't exist here. If you'd like to skip that step, that's fine. I do it for myself just so that I remember more. The key would be basically a brain dump and then put it on your calendar. So now that I have my 6 things, Konikow, Domus, Halcyon, Hulls, Wasco, productivity, I just go onto my calendar for my day and I say, when am I going to get this done? Ideally, you do this the day before so that I can look at my calendar and say, well, I'm slammed with team trainings and stuff in the morning. I got my productivity call. The only time I have today to do this is between probably 2 and 5 p.m. I'm going to put those blocks in, and you can be damn sure I'm going to hit those time blocks because I know that I've only got so much time to do it, right? When you get to a level where you have an assistant and you're working with your assistant on these things, this is where they can help you incredibly by populating those time blocks with the links and the things that you need so that you don't have to do something that takes 20 clicks. You just open your calendar and you do the thing. So I live by my calendar, and that is literally the majority of my methodology. Is my daughter does this thing. She goes brain dump, plop onto paper, and then I put it in my calendar daily, ideally twice a day, and it takes 15 minutes. My daughter would laugh if she heard me saying that, but it's true because I know I'm a human being and I'm going to fail. I'm never going to remember everything. And I genuinely think, as I'm talking about this out loud, the digital brain digital brain or paper. I think you only need one. I do it just because of the amount of stuff that we're managing, but that would be the initial methodology. Now, when you start looking at your calendar, right, and you've brain dumped your important stuff into your calendar, you can go back to your habit layering exercise and start thinking about ways to optimize your calendar. Here's a couple tips I'm going to give you in terms of time blocking your year that I think would be incredibly valuable for you all. Going back to the 5 F's, why we're doing this business, and principles of not letting other people run your business. Once a year, take a massive vacation. And if you don't have a lot of money, it doesn't matter. You can still take probably 3 weeks off and do a staycation and get your house in order. Once a quarter, take 5 to 7 days off. And it doesn't have to be crazy. You can go camping if you want. Once a month, take a 3-day weekend. Once a week, let the equipment rest. I've challenged 3 of my agents this week to not work on Sundays. Take 1 day off. If you have, I see you. If you have to work on Sunday, you can take another day as the Sabbath. That's obviously part of my faith, but I would tell you, even if you're not a believer, it is so important to let the equipment rest. I see Kyle on this call, and I told Kyle once, reason is, Kyle, if you weren't here and we were up against each other in a listing appointment on Monday and you drove yourself into the ground 7 days before that and I rested on Sunday, you will not compete with me because my energy level will be here. I'll be a pleasure to be around. And the chances are I get that listing are a lot higher. Chick-fil-A is the most successful fast food restaurant out there, outsells McDonald's, Subways, and Starbucks combined. And they're in NFL stadiums and they don't open on Sundays because they let the equipment rest, right? Very important. Once a day, do something that scares you. Put it in your calendar. Maybe it's a cold plunge. Maybe it's going for a walk in the forest, whatever that looks like. Then business happens during business hours. I would say you need an incredible morning routine. I think it is so important for you to build your own miracle morning. Do not touch your phone when you wake up. Go to bed at a reasonable hour. Try and not look at any devices or social media an hour before you go to bed, and start getting rid of the dopamine in your life and start filling it with the things that will help you become a better person. This is something I'm literally borderline going to delete some social media apps off my phone because I find myself in distraction. I can tell myself it's for business, but once I actually go back on the social media apps, they're designed by scientists and people who are very smart to lure me in, and I'm checking them too frequently. So I need to get back to what I'm doing with my email and realize that I'm in and I'm out. I'm intentional when I'm in there. I'm engaged. I'm adding to my community. I'm in conversation, but I need to redevelop a habit in that space for the other stuff, right? Then I would also challenge you not to take appointments in the morning. How many times do you take a listing appointment or a buyer tour at 9 a.m. just because that's when they wanted to do it? Going back to the question about, well, what if they want access to you 24 hours a day? Business happens when business happens, right? Like I have a client that called me and he said he wants to see a property. And I said, no problem at all. These are the time blocks that are available. And he's like, oh, I'm going to go with somebody else. And he's like one of my good buddies. I know he's not going to do that. The sellers need to get the property ready. Now, if I had to drop everything and do it because that deal is going to get done, I would absolutely do it. But that's not the case with this situation. We figured out a time block. It's going to work. It's fine. Or I would have had a team member run out and do it, or I would have partnered with an agent that could drop everything they're doing and doing it. There's always a sense of urgency on things that aren't necessarily urgent, if that makes sense. So I tell most of my team, learning the market, training as a collective, and building your business are the 3 most important things you need to be doing. It's why the guys next door hire us. It's why our clients hire us, is we know the market better than anybody. We practice our craft. That happens in the morning. I would say 8 to about 11 o'clock. If you're going to be prospecting, actually the best time to call people is probably 8 to about 9:30 a.m. in the morning. Then you get in collaboration and practice. Maybe it's daily role playing, scripting. Maybe it's working with your team members on training. Then you build your business from like 11 to 12, take a lunch break, and then all your appointments are already stacked in your calendar from 1 until 4 p.m. Grab some groceries, eat some food, have a good nighttime routine, and go to bed. Sounds crazy because it's like, well, I'm an agent that just works 24 hours a day. But if you're intentional with the time that you're actually working, you will get more done within your morning routine, your structured, actual real estate business morning. your appointments in the afternoon, and resting well at nighttime than the guy that's working 24 hours a day. That I promise you. That framework I just gave you is 3 days worth of work from your normal agents one day who rolls out of bed at 9 or 9:30, jumps on the phones, goes out into the office, maybe does a broker open tour and does all these things, stays busy, but isn't growing because they're not intentional about where they're deploying their time, skill, and resources, right? And I do an audit on myself, which we're going to talk about next, just see if there's any more questions around that structure in terms of time blocking, loading your calendar, and making sure that you are taking time off and working on your time. Is there anything that I missed? I cannot see that chat. It is way too small on that little prompter.
No problem. So I see Diane Needle dropped a question. So Diane, if you're here, you can unmic to ask Justin your question.
Hey, Justin.
Hey, Diane, where are you from?
uh,
In case you get a referral.
Justin, it's Diane Needle.
I know where you're from, but tell
Yeah,
everybody who doesn't know you like I know you.
Yes. I'm in the Boston suburbs, everybody. Thank you for doing this, Justin. I've been working on my time productivity for the past year, trying to really nail it down. I would be on camera, except that I'm suffering from COVID,
No,
so
you're
I'll
fine. We'll help
spare
you feel better.
everybody. Thank you. But here's my question. I do use this great planner, and I wrote down in the chat, the headings in my planner, meaning the to-do things that I brain dump with, are always in different categories. So my categories include best self, so that would be my working out, my health, all that stuff.
Sure.
Home love, family and friend connections, TNG, the Needle Group team growth, CEO work, client love. That's it. Anything that's in my life that's important to me that are working towards my goals are going to fit into one of those headings. And I was curious, you started mentioning your notes that you used before Asana, and I wrote down critical, build, create events. I was curious what your headings are because I struggled to come up with those a little bit. And I was wondering if they are working for me as best as they could. And knowing how great you are at this, I'm wondering what your headings are, if you would. What are the categories?
Yeah, I'll give those to you right now. I can't share the screen because there's some stuff on there that is definitely not
No problem.
to be shared publicly. And I went through the same thing as you did. I think we all get checklists, planners. We end up having a checklist on our phone, on our Remarkable tablet, Asana, Google Works. We have 95 different things. One thing that I try and do, and this is just a precursor to the headings, I will answer your question, is do a systems review once a year. What do you use for communication? What do you use for task management, say project management? Because I think sometimes if you can funnel those down to one thing, that's key. And also using planners, you got to customize them for yourself. And I'm actually probably just going to put out a PDF and send it to this list after, or figure some way of taking this course and compiling it into something a little bit more structured you could watch again on your own time. RR and I have talked about that before because there's a lot here. My headings are goals, critical, follow-ups, build, create, waiting on. Those are basically my categories. And critical's first, obviously, follow-ups are second, build is third, create, and then waiting on. And waiting on is simply something that I sent to somebody that I know is important, but I'm waiting on something back from them. And then this actually gets to the next portion on how I scan and reorganize this list and why I like a digital brain versus just paper is once it's in the digital brain, I can drag and drop and I can move stuff around and I can delete it versus having to write it out every single time. So is that helpful?
Yes, and your digital brain. Justin, you said your digital brain is Asana?
Asana is what I use. It's very expensive. Notion is a really good one. And Trello is free. Vogue uses Trello to run their team. But I would say don't get overwhelmed by the systems. There's so many features and things. Start with a piece of paper and just come up with the categories that matter to you. And for myself, it's the house is burning down. What do I have to do today? What do I have to do 7 days from now and then 30 days from now? There's a level up from this too, where I don't think I'm going into it today. Working with assistants, I will touch on that for you, Anna, because you asked that question. But for all of my teams, we have a separate list. And the list for the new dev team, farms, RR, the admin team is offload. And then it's critical, 7, 30, 365. And that's the same list we use for every single team at Prime. So that offload means, oh, I have this thing that I got to talk to RR about, but I'm not going to interrupt her day. I'll talk to her in the morning when we do a quick sync up. And then we can give it a deadline and a definition of done. Right. So I use that for like team management, for task delegation. But once the task is delegated, it's up to the individual to manage their own to-do list. However, that they manage it works for them. So if Rob James is an agent in production and needs to follow up with buyers and sellers to close deals, that's going to be a category list for him. I think critical works for everybody. I think building works for everybody too, because all of us should be building our business, working on that website, deciding if you're going to do, mailers or whatever. These are all things that you need to get to. You're just not making time for it, right? And the other thing I didn't touch on when I talk about my weekly cadence or my weekly structure is miracle morning routine that I talked about learning. So I'm typically ingesting something that has to do with business or the marketplace. Then I'm typically practicing my craft, because they say if you don't do something 2 hours a week, you're not really doing it. Then I'm prospecting, then I'm building my business. And I'm very intentional about that kind of repeating cycle. So, and then I may as well touch on working with assistants before I get to the goal setting. And we've got about 7 minutes left. So I'll blast through this if everybody's okay with that. So Anna asked about pointers working with other agents and sharing commissions and tidbits for hiring an assistant. So working with other agents and commissions, I mean, the standard in the industry is when you're working with another agent, you share a deal 50-50, and the agent that produced that deal is the one that shouldn't technically have to lift a finger other than do relationship management. That other agent that is getting that business that they never had should be doing all of the actual boots on the ground work. And I've been in both positions, right? I still am. If a team member brings a lead to Prime, one of our team members brought a builder, my expectation is I'm going to have to work and hustle and try really hard to make sure I'm doing all the boots on the ground stuff, whether that be me or by people that I'm paying to be me, right? I think it gets a little bit hairy if you don't have those conversations ahead of time, because people feel like, well, I'm doing all the work. Why are they getting 50%? You never had the business to begin with, right? Like they can just keep it all and then you don't get a single deal. And I guess the question is, do you want a whole watermelon or do you want a watermelon field? I stole that from a summit that we were just at. And it's very, very true. It's a scarcity mindset versus an abundance mindset, but it kind of starts in the beginning and setting expectations. Working with assistants, I think I've hired and released many assistants over the years. And I made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, hiring the wrong people, by not being clear on what my vision was, what our core values were, and what the culture was here, right? I think working with assistants, where I've developed a great relationship with RR, is trying to figure out what matters to her. Where does she want to go in her career? What type of person is she? What type of thinker is she? Buying her books, having conversations, resources on how we can collaborate. There's a great book called Rocket Fuel. A lot of agents should read it, because you're probably going to be the visionary and the assistants are going to be the integrators to get things done. But I'm also humble enough to know that I'm far from perfect. And a lot of the mistakes that have been made, I'll always take ownership for, and they fall on me. I think the biggest mistake most people can make is blaming the assistant, when in reality, it's either you not setting the expectation, not onboarding them properly, or giving them enough time, or expecting them to know what you already know without teaching them that thing, right? I also think delegating outcomes versus tasks is incredibly important. Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, incredible book. Talks heavily about, I don't care how it happens. My seller needs to feel really good about us staying on top of the market, telling them what's going on with their listing. That's it, right? And explaining how that happens versus use this email template and do this and do that. We just made a big shift this morning so my agents can work faster on those types of things. So those are 2 tips that I would give. I could probably do another entire segment on the offload meeting structure and how do you project manage tasks and projects with assistants, but I will not have time today, unfortunately. But I'll put that on the docket. RR, make a note of that. And Lisa Smith also asked, I asked the question, what would you like help with? And it was not being so reactive and being more proactive. What questions do you have about, she needs help with team compensation. And I think ultimately that comes down to the same conversation we just had with the previous question. And it comes down to setting expectations and making sure you're communicating whenever money comes up on the table. I can tell you from experience, when agents start counting by money, we have a problem, because we are in a place where we built this so that we always put the client, the consumer, before ourselves. But I've seen agents counting their paychecks before the deal is even done, not willing to do things for people that are massive potential opportunities and relationships because they're not making enough on that specific deal and they don't value the relationship. So that's probably a few examples where I didn't set the expectation from the beginning, but no harm, no foul. They're just not built for the culture that we have here. There's another brokerage that they can go work at. It's just not Prime, right? And I think same thing with me. Like when I start counting other people's money, it becomes very problematic and I'll second guess myself in terms of that relationship. I want to outgive the people I'm in partnership with. You bring me a deal, I'm going to bring you two back, right? If you have that mentality, you're actually in a partnership. If somebody is only with you for the leads and the money, eventually they're going to leave you. So better they leave you now than later. So anyways, I'll leave it at that. Goal setting and weekly reflection. So the other question that lady had before was, how do you stay proactive in your business? Well, I just gave you the blueprint. You stay proactive by reviewing your calendar and your goals on a regular basis. Once a year, we're coming up to that time of year, we do a huge business planning session at Prime. And we don't complicate things. We go back to the 5 pillars. We have this little target. I think I stole it from Tom Ferry. And it was rating yourself in different aspects of your life, kind of 1 out of 10, 7's not an option. And saying like, okay, this is where you're at in your business now. Where do you want to go from here? You hit your 25 deals. Great. You want to do 50, but like what type of deals do you want to do? What type of travel do you want to do? What do you want to do with your personal brand? How do you want to grow? Do you want to pour into a team member? Do you want to hire an assistant? Like, what is your next evolution? Because what got you here will not get you there and markets will shift. So you need to be growing every single year. So we do that once a year. I have my goals in my daily planner. So I look at my goals daily. That's the reality of it, is I see them. I don't always spend the time to really sit down and think about them, but I see them. And I think that's incredibly important. Put them on your mirror where you brush your teeth in the morning. Doesn't really matter. And then once a quarter, I do a leadership retreat with my wife. And we talk about all aspects of our business. And we make major decisions and we pivot. And we're constantly looking at, well, we did this. Is it really working and tracking to where we want to go? We have some major decisions to make over the next 30 days. The next 7 days, I'm going to be with her essentially at a staycation. We have to do some renovations. It's all happening at the same time. So guess what? We're going to tackle some major business stuff, take lots of walks on the beach, go to the Pinery. And it's intentionality that will get you to that next stage. Why are we doing it now? Because then we meet with the team in November and we have the family reunion and we give them the vision and the roadmap for Prime and where we're going as a company, and they can choose if it's the right place for them or not. Our business isn't reliant on them saying yes or no. We're heading in a direction and we are dead set on reaching that direction through our actions, right? Then I talk about my 2 habits that I do, right? I talk about the brain dump and the mind and the time blocking that Faith always makes fun of me about. That's a daily habit. Once a week, I review my week. So this is where the rubber really hits the road at the end. On Saturdays, typically before her and Faith are awake, after I'm done my workout in the morning and everything, I'll take 45 minutes and I'll just open up my calendar and I'll look at my week and I will really audit myself. Did I drop the ball? Did I do things that produced a ton of business and things that didn't? I'm auditing one major thing that I've done for 5 years, and I'm not sure that I'm going to deploy the resources against it for much longer because it got me to where I wanted it to get me. But I feel like that time and resources should be redeployed somewhere else that I think will get us to the next level. And I could pull a couple $1,000 off that, put it into something else. And I'm like 90% sure that we're going to do it. I'm not 100% sure until maybe this Saturday, until I sit down and go over it one more time. But doing a weekly reflection is so key. And then week sweep. So I talk about mind sweeping and time blocking daily, week sweep. Plan your week ahead on Saturday. Know what you're going to be doing before you get into the week. Too many people wake up Monday, hit the ground running, and they feel overwhelmed and they're reactive. Their phone starts ringing, fires start happening, and they're not doing the 3 things they should be doing. They're not learning the market, they're not prospecting, and they're not marketing themselves. So we're over time. It's 2:00. All of you have a billion things to do as well. I will stay for an extra 5 or 10 minutes and I'll open up the mic for some Q&A and some feedback. The structure, just to remind you guys, is build out 5 pillars in your life. Rate yourself 1 out of 10, 7's not an option. And then think of what would it take for you to go from like a 5 to an 8 to a 10. Then time block that into your calendar for the year, front loaded year, right? Think about what I said. Take 1 vacation a year, take, 5 to 7 days off once a quarter, 3-day weekend once a month. Plug all of that into your calendar. along with the habit stacking that is going to get you to your goals, and try and line those all up together. And then put a recurring reminder. I told you, use the calendar once a week to do a week sweep, once a day to do a little mind sweep. If you really want to supercharge the next phase of your career and life, do 50 minutes in the morning, 50 minutes at night. I do think I'm going to shoot a much more comprehensive A to Z on this whole process. I'm working on that with the team on the back end. Now is not the season for it, but it will be coming down the pipeline. So hopefully you guys got, hey, Megan, I didn't even know you're here. Thank you, Megan Luker. If you want to unmic, actually, Megan was the inception for this. I was in her space. So you can talk about our clubhouse room and say hi to everybody and introduce yourself if you're here, and you can go on mic. She might not be able to though.
Hi, Justin.
Yeah, there she is.
Excited. Megan Luker in Virginia Beach. Justin is amazing, and he pops in and out of our clubhouse room on a regular basis when he can. And we talked about time management. It seemed to be always a topic we were talking about. And I'm just, from the bottom of my heart, gracious for this time you spent today. My big takeaway was the planning on Saturday. And your calendar looks like mine. So I got so excited.
You're very systemized. So, I mean, she comes from the military world as well, too, like SOPs. And like, I do think sometimes we can get too overwhelmed with rigidity and structure and SOPs. We know we're trying to achieve an outcome, but I do find the calendar and the tools from a planning perspective, it gets all the stress out of your head and somewhere else where it exists. And there's a freedom to knowing what you should be doing and when you should be doing it, right?
I just need to do the 5:30 wake up now instead of the 6.
So I've changed my mind on that a little bit. So like I'm still a morning hawk, so I wake up typically 5 o'clock. But what I've studied on people is, so in Outlive, it talks about how important sleep is. And people killing themselves just to wake up early and go to bed late, not a great idea for longevity. The people that wake up at like 3 a.m, go to bed at like 8 or 9. The people that wake up at 5 go to bed at like 9 or 10. Right? The people that get up at 6 go to bed at 11 or 12. Like we're very similar, but we put too much pressure on ourselves. But I think you got to figure out a cadence that works for you and your lifestyle and try different things. But there is proven science that if you go to the bed at the same time every night and you wake up at the same time every day, if you can get yourself to do that for, I think it's only like 5 days, your circadian rhythm really kicks in, and then you get REM sleep, your quality of your sleep improves dramatically. So there's a lot of science behind that. Amazing. Well, there's so much good feedback here too. We'll stick around for a couple minutes if anybody wants to unmic, introduce yourself, potentially get some business or new relationships. If not, we can land the plane. I'm good with either or.
Hey, Justin, it's Michelle B. #Soboka.
What's up? Michelle's one of my oldest friends on social, originally from London, Ontario, and Soboka in Florida has some of the best social channels out there.
Go Western.
That's right.
This was wonderful. Thank you guys. Thanks, Megan and Justin, for coordinating that today. That was really good to see your calendar, because my calendar has some colors now, and I'm trying to get a better flow. I think that's what I have to work on, is my creativity flow.
I think you're a creator by nature too, right? And I think making sure that you have the creative, like the going out and shooting the content, even if it doesn't mean you're going to post it, just so you can practice with the devices, is so key. So like I'm trying to shoot most of my vlog content for my YouTube channel on my Osmo Pocket 3, and I'm shooting them daily now, and they're not long. But I'm just getting used to like different shots and setups. And I know, Megan, you're doing the same thing, right? So yeah, I think being intentional about putting it in your calendar makes a big difference.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah. And then the week review at the end of the week, you're like, crap, I only did it 1 out of 5 days. The week after, you're like, okay, I'll do 2 this week, right? And then progressively you get to where you want to get. So no, I appreciate you being here. Katie Payne, I see you as well too. Donna, anybody else, feel free to unmic and say hi to everybody. If not, we are done.
Quick question,
guys.
Justin.
Yeah, you're good.
Oh.
Go ahead. You go ahead, Catherine, and then we'll go to Leo.
What's your like can't live without either app or system that you use?
It's funny. I can
To stay
delete all.
organized.
Yeah, I can delete all of the apps. I'd say my calendar is the answer, because I can delete Asana. I can delete my notepad. None of that. Like I'm not reliant on the system, because the system lives in here. I can take a napkin and a pen, and I can do a star, follow up, B, C, O. That's all I need. right? And I also think like you got to get used to, if you become too reliant on the system, you should take a break. Like I was tracking all of my habits like crazy for a year, and I'm like, this is time to stop because I'm become reliant on the application. So I'd say it's the overall system that matters. But yeah, to answer your question, my calendar by far is the one thing I wouldn't want to live without. And the only reason I say that is having your events
It's the
with the
base.
links and the addresses in it. Like that saves me thousands of hours a year for sure.
And you just use like a Google Calendar?
Google Calendar. So
I
system
don't
stack
remember your
wise,
calendar.
yeah, I mentioned this earlier. So I said do a system sweep once a year. So there's systems, which is what's your back office. So maybe it's Office 365. We use Google Workspace. Then it's comms. What do you use to communicate with your team? I used to use text message, Slack, email, Instagram DMs, Facebook Messenger, goes on and on. Now our team uses Google Chat and Google Workspace. So it's one system, right? Then I think of
Okay.
data storage. I use Google Data Storage. It's part of Google Workspace, right? And then I think of project management. I use Asana, but you could literally use your Notepad, Trello. Notion, I almost pulled the plug and moved everything to Notion because it's really good. And that's pretty much it. And then I use Later to manage my social media content scheduling, if that helps.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I had those 3 written down from earlier. Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks,
sure.
Justin.
Leo, what's up, buddy?
Justin, thank you so much for putting this on. It's Leo Grant from Ottawa, Canada. One of the things I wanted to say was it's been a great session. Helps me see where I am in terms of where I need to be and where everything is. And it's good. It's been really good. One of the things I harped on in my head a long time is a perfect work week. And so with those time blocks, what I've actually done is with my calendar, with like, the calendar apps that you can send so someone can book an appointment. I've actually set them up on that app to only allow people to book appointments when I want those appointments. So if it's a listing appointment or a buyer consult or anything for that matter, it's like, I already know that those are at what time of the day. So I don't really give them the opportunity to book in the morning. So if they really want to book in the morning, they're going to message me and say, hey, I tried to book in your calendar for tomorrow morning and Thursday morning, but it's booked. Make them, so that's actually helped me because at that point, like if I don't have an appointment, I know that I don't have an appointment and I don't have to worry like, oh, do I have a listing appointment today? No, I don't, because that's the time that there's listing appointments, right? So you kind of get into that routine and the other thing too is by doing that is that I default it, right? So if someone says I want a listing appointment tomorrow at 1. You know what I mean? Like it's automatic. It's never like, 11, 12. No, it's 1 to 3. That's it.
One thing I didn't touch was, so like if your family life, you live out of town, all the different things are happening in your life. I looked at my week and I started thinking of what days am I working with Shannon, where we live? What days am I in the actual office working on the team stuff? What flex days do I have? And then what days are media day? So Thursday is always media day, typically, right? This is very rare that I'm doing media or a Zoom call or podcast, whatever, on a Tuesday. Normally, I know Thursdays are for when we shoot content, listing videos, Prime People podcast, like that is media day. And what Leo said is so key. Once you build a pattern of this is just what I do now. I just wake up at this time. I know I just grab my Bible and I journal, and then I know I work out. I actually like out of body experience. Sometimes you're just doing the thing because it's become so easy. Like I just grab my shoes and this is just what I do now, right? Or if I'm prospecting, I know that this is just what I do now. Or if I'm working on my business, your brain has this ability of setting itself into that pattern. Now, I will break the pattern so I don't become dependent on it. And what Leo said is true. Like I'll have pretty rigid parameters around when I'm booking appointments for different types of stuff. But if Colin next door is like, hey, I got to meet and this is the only time I can meet, he's my client. I'll work around his clock for sure. Like I'll have that one-on-one ability to flex and not freak out because my perfect day got thrown for a loop. But the key is what I said in the beginning. If you hit your perfect week 60% of the time, you're better than like 95% of the world. And it is literally, that's the difference maker. The most successful mentors and people I've met have a really good morning routine. They're very intentional about where they spend their time, their effort, and their money, and they have very clear goals. The rest doesn't matter if you don't have those 3 things. So speaking of which, I'm 11 minutes over, and I definitely need the next 15 minutes to prepare for my 2:30 because it's time blocked. So appreciate you all being here. I'm going to send out some resources over the next couple weeks after to this list. I am very thankful to see all your faces, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thanks so much, Justin.
Nice to see you, Mia. See you guys.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
bye,
Thank you,
Justin.
Justin.
Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
Justin.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.